Good. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Town of North Stonington Board of Finance meeting on May 21st, 2025 at 7 o'clock. I'm Vice Chair Dan Smith, Carl Johnson, Gary Nino, Amy Friend, Lou Gincarella, and online Winona Burdine. Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Public comments. Brian, you're up.
Dan, there's no audio online.
Hello. Hey, can you hear us now? Or...
Dan, there's no audio online.
All right, we're gonna have Brett on it. Can you hear us now, Winona?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Barely. I hear a lot of feedback.
Can you hear me now?
No.
No. Can you hear? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Try it again.
That's better.
Better? Better?
Yes, let me hear Brian.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yep, I can hear Brian too.
Okay, Brian.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, you might not want to. I'm sure you
Brian.
will.
Go
Board of
ahead.
Finance has been good. Okay, anyways, as we all know, the budget passed. And I want to commend our Board of Selectmen and our Board of Finance for the job they did. I would ask, actually now, I'm not sure if you'll discuss it tonight, but I saw a mill rate discussion on here, and I figured I'd better speak now or forever hold my peace. I would like to see no reduction from the undesignated fund to lower the mill rate, because I think that's a disservice to the taxpayer, because it's really not going to give them a true understanding of how much our mill rate is. I think it's time people realize that when we take our undesignated fund and lower the mill rate, we're kind of faking them out, not totally being honest with them. If that mill rate is higher, and we use the undesignated fund, yeah, it makes them feel better because it doesn't come out of their pocket this year. But if they use it every year, to me, that's fooling me. I'd like to know totally what our mill rate will be, and I think that's what our town should show us, and that's what we should be paying, because I think it will make a difference in the future when we have these budget meetings. I fought every tooth and nail to lower anything, but I will say for that, no. The overage, I am still adamant on putting it toward debt. I just had, unbelievably, a small overage on my personal budget, and it went toward the debt. So anyways, I guess I'm not going to get into a big spiel about it. But I want to see people understand, and people to understand that is what's going to affect their budget, the full mill rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. You?
John Olson. I'm not sure. Sure. I'm not sure how this meeting is going to go, whether you're going to allow public to participate in the budget discuss, mill rate discussion. As Brian said, it's our understanding that the use of the excess in the undesignated fund may be a part of that discussion. 2 weeks ago, I was told at the meeting, at the budget discussion, that it wouldn't be until the summer, but if that discussion is going to happen this evening, I've done a lot of math and paperwork in preparation for that discussion. So before any determination is done on that, I'd like to participate in that discussion. The other question I have is a question. We passed the budget with a presentation of how much would be spent based on what was presented and a certain amount used to pay down the debt. So because that budget passed, does the Board of Finance now have the authority without another vote to alter how much potentially would be paid down on debt? If the discussion of this excess is going to go toward that debt, does it require another vote, or is it going to be a small group private meeting decision?
I guess I mean, I apologize for being late. We have the referendum results. We have a budget that, you know, as presented at the hearing and the town meeting. Anything can be, if any member of this board can bring up whatever they want during the discussion of how we're going to set the mill rate at this point. There was no pre-discussion about doing anything beyond using the undesignated fund to fill any gaps in the revenue versus expenditure. So any discussion beyond that would be the first time would be tonight. So there has been no pre-discussion in this group outside a public venue for on that front. So I don't know necessarily, John, what's going to be proposed here tonight. I know that from here going forward, and when I said that at the public hearing, that's right. I meant that, you know, if we were going to do anything additional with regard to using excess undesignated fund per our policy to do something with it, it would probably be after the mill rate discussion. But those discussions could start now. They could continue the next hearing, next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting. I don't necessarily, I don't have an answer for you about what the plan is, because we don't have a plan.
Okay, the reason why I asked that question is I did stop into the finance office and received paperwork with potential payouts on some of the loans with a date for potential payout of June 30th of 2025, which is only a month away. So that's what I raised that question for. And so if that discussion is going to begin tonight, again, the question is the public allowed to participate in your discussion, or do we have to wait until the end of the evening after thoughts and considerations are over?
Generally speaking, you would have to wait till the last public comment. If you, I mean, you have an opportunity right now. We don't speak ex parte as far as, you know, outside of meetings. So I don't know, you know, there was a request for, you know, what do we have out there for capital to have this information available to us, you know, tonight as we talk about the mill rate, setting the mill rate. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't want to make you wait until the end, but I don't necessarily know if you giving us your thoughts before we begin this discussion is going to be beneficial either. All I could say is we could possibly table. I mean, we don't have a suspense list, so that budget item is probably going to be tabled. So this mill rate discussion is going to be probably close to the end. And so your comments on that would be fresh, part and parcel of that discussion. So I would say you probably would wait to the end, and I don't think everything else is going to take that long.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that I'd have the opportunity to present what I'd worked on. I did actually work on the per dollar savings over the course of every one of these loans that we have, so that you can help decide, if you haven't done it yourselves already, on which loans, if you're going to pay down some of the loans, which ones would be far more beneficial than others.
I think,
And it doesn't agree with what's written on this page from the finance office.
okay. I don't know what you received from the finance office, so.
If you're willing to allow me to participate in that, or at least show this to you afterwards before any decisions are made, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank
You're welcome. Any other public comment? All right, we're going on to agenda item number 4. We have an appropriation request from the Board of Selectmen.
I would expect nothing less, Gary. Thank you guys for having us here tonight. As you know, this was discussed about at length multiple times over probably a year. So at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, we voted to bring forward to you a additional appropriation of up to not to exceed $130,000 for a compact, I always say mini excavator. This one's slightly larger than a typical mini, but it's a compact excavator. We have right now we have 3 quotes in. We are waiting on one other one. But the one that Alan likes as of right now comes in around $123,663. And just so you know, so far from the older equipment that we sold at the highway garage, we sold that for about $93,111. And we have an old excavator that's going to be sold as well. That's the approximate $10,000. So that brought in about $103,000 that is not in the undesignated account yet, or it's about to be. The reason for the ask, and you guys know I've been talking about this for a while, and it was one of the few things that came out at a meeting that I got a lot of public positive response from some people that don't like to spend money in town. So I thought it was a great alternative to bring that forward again now. Right now, we spend between $12,000 and $13,000 on renting this machine. And the life expectancy, as some of you might know, it's about 8,000 hours, or when we figured it out with Alan, we're saying 15 to 20 years life expectancy, and even greater than that. But at 20 years, it's probably time to replace it and move on and get a different one. So between 15 and 20 year life expectancy for our town on this equipment. So right there off the savings, if you look down the road, we're saving half the money than we would expenditure, and that without any escalation costs and rentals, things like that. Currently, our roads, about more than half of them are in needed repair with drainage, things like that. And that's where a lot of this mini excavator work is being utilized for. So we talked about it prior. It's a one-time expenditure compared to renting it every month. So we're bringing it forward to you guys today to hopefully move this forward in June. So Alan could get working on the drainage that needs to be done without renting equipment and putting that money out. Go ahead, Dan.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to move forward the appropriation, approve the appropriation to not exceed $130,000 for the mini excavator.
Second that. Any discussion? Make sure you use microphones, please. All right, can you hear us, Winona?
When's the Volvo going for sale?
She
I
can't-
cannot hear Gary.
Gary, that's why you gotta, it's on, but bring it closer to your lips.
I can't get any closer, I'll be swallowing it.
It's not working at all. Literally can't hear Gary. I'm sorry, Gary.
When is the Volvo excavator going for sale? Our existing excavator? Because I'd like a commitment that if something new comes in, the old one goes out.
The excavator will be going on sale right after the fair is over.
And Brett, can I ask a question? You had mentioned, I don't think I heard your complete sentence. You said we spend 12 to 13,000 for rent. Is that a month,
A year,
a year?
correct. And part of the issue too, when we rent and it gets extended sometimes because of weather issues or heavy rains, then the machine is sitting there, we're paying rent on it without being able to use it as well.
So something that the greater audience may not have heard at an earlier Board of Selectmen meeting is our existing excavator is too large to do the work that we need it to do because it shuts down 2 lanes of the road when we can only shut down 1. So the smaller excavator is much more conducive for the type of work we need to do. And by buying it, we avoid a rental fee, an annual rental fee that was sort of hidden in the maintenance, not hidden intentionally, but it was buried in the maintenance budget. So we get rid of an older excavator, monetize the asset and put it towards the purchase of an excavator that's the right size for the type of work we need to do. Correct, Alan? Getting a thumbs up, Winona.
Go ahead, Lou.
So we're paying $12,000 a year in annual rent,
12 to 13,
and this costs $130,000.
correct. Now that,
When you rent it,
go ahead.
they take care of the maintenance, the insurance, everything.
That's true. So if you look at
We
the,
will now assume that cost.
right, but with the machine, it's minimal maintenance on those other than general maintenance. They don't tend to break major over that lifespan up into the, you're getting the 6,000 hours or so. But also that's $130,000 over that 20 years. So you'd have to say we'd have to maintain $130,000 of maintenance to make up for that in that 20-year span.
No, what I'm saying is that you've got the luck by doing it, by renting it. It's somebody else's asset and they take care of it. And you only need it. You only get it when you need it. And what's that?
It's also man hours of us going, getting it, trailering it. So I didn't account for any of those hours
Right.
as well. And
One of the benefits
Let
of
me,
leasing.
one thing, Lou. Let's see if Alan will answer it or not. If he is to break the rental as far as a chunk off of it or a bucket or hydraulic hose, is the rental guy pay for it or does? We do.
we pay for
So anything major, we have to pay for anyways. It's probably in the rental agreement. As far as changing the oil,
General maintenance.
general maintenance, which is usually nil to none on those, except for filters and hydraulic oil.
it. In one
And
thing-
grease.
No, I
There's a lot of
understand.
grease.
But it's, if we own it and we break it, we're gonna repair it regardless. So the only thing I'm getting at is by acquiring $130,000 asset, the town's gonna own it, and when it's not using it, it's gonna be sitting there doing nothing. As opposed to when you lease or you just rent one for an event, you're only going to have it when you absolutely need it. And there can be some benefit to that. But
you're
it's-
also gonna be tied to when you can get it.
Mm.
If you need it tomorrow, because something just killed over or died or whatever, and you have to
Mhm.
bury it, I have to call the lease company. I have to get them to drop it off. If it's already busy, it's not gonna be here for 2 or 3 days. Your road might be closed off because there's a big tree across it you can't get rid
Yeah.
of.
And one thing I will throw out there, based on the history of our use, it's been going up and up each year.
Yeah.
The use of the mini and what we need that for. And a lot of that, to Alan's benefit, since he's been doing a lot of this drainage work himself, we're catching up to stuff that should have been done years ago. That we are now being able to do as needed and ahead of the curve. So it's all preventative, a lot of the work we're doing as well as the emergency stuff that he runs into. But I think they'll find that they utilizing it more and more each year. And if you look at the history of how much we've been spending on it, every year it's going up and up based on our usage.
And I just want to add, we're shedding an older excavator that's currently on the books that we own
Yeah, oh,
in
that's,
lieu of this. So it should be a net wash on some of the costs
oh,
that
yeah,
you
so
mentioned.
you're basically talking about a $30,000 net.
Bingo.
So,
Yeah, that was my,
20,000.
that was gonna be my point, is like, you have the absolute convenience of having a machine that is proper for the use. You have it when you want it. You're taking assets that we're likely to have them at most a $27,000 delta from machines you sell to replace it for something that you now have an asset for. I think it's worth it in that sense. But your points are well taken. So. Anybody else?
Thank you
All
for
those
your
in
time.
favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Do we include somebody in? Winona's in?
Am I seated?
Yes.
You are seated.
I voted aye.
You voted aye. 6-0.
July 13th, I'll be watching.
Thank you. I'm sure you will. Take a look. We're all on the same page that it will be going up after that date.
When's the town meeting gonna be on that?
We're looking to do it in the beginning of June, second week of June.
Okay.
Potentially.
All right.
Yeah, mid to late June.
And we have agenda item number 5, the Board of Selectmen financials. I'm considering tabling that. I haven't really had a chance to review it, and Suzanne, we're looking decent as far as you're concerned. Okay, so we're going to table that to a future meeting where we don't have as much to discuss. Tax collector's report is the next item. I don't know if Zane is on. Yeah, she's on. Zane, if you could just come on the meeting, if you would. She's now unmuted. Hi, Zane.
Hello.
So why don't you just tell us kind of where we are? And I think we're just a smidge under 98.5% on collections, right?
Yeah, I think Bob and I figured it out last week together, and it ended up coming out 98.4 at this time. So we're in a good place.
And are you expecting any additional revenue to come in as before we even get to the final?
I don't know if I'll receive too much more. Tax demands did go out recently. Lien notices also went out recently. That usually brings in a little bit. But I'm sure we'll hit 98.5.
That's all we need, that's all we need to hear. Any questions for Zane, anybody? All right, Zane, thank you so much and great job.
Thank you.
All right, referendum results. Was this year number 4, Bob? First go around? I know it was not a great turnout, but I think we had like a 2-to-1 margin for yays versus nays. So I don't know. I'm proud as hell about all of us. So I'm gonna.
And I'm sure that you guys see the news around the area. There's a lot of towns, a lot of our neighboring towns that aren't feeling so good the last week or so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of budgets that are going back.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to a guy today who's from Stonington, and he's not that happy with what's going on there, and the schools are a mess, and so I think we're relatively in good shape, and it's an effort on the parts of the Board of Selectmen and town government and the Board of Education and everyone in the fiscal department that are really keeping things going, and everyone, all the heads keeping things on budget. Keep our undesignated fund healthy, which allows us to do the things we're doing. So keep it up. Bob? Sure, yeah. Yeah. We do have a tri-board meeting, which we'll be hosting on June 9th. So we'll kind of like wrap up, what's going on with, what happened during budget season. We might have more information with regard to, state issues with federal funding issues. And obviously we'll have the mill rate set by then. We'll sort of know where we are with the undesignated fund and what we're doing with that.
Mike, could we move number 9, or no, number 10 up before we start on the other next ones? Get
Sure.
that out of the way, so if we go a little longer, we can get out of here afterwards.
I have no problem with that. We can bump up review of minutes now. That's everybody. Do we have other ones in the public hearing? Or do you have I thought we had some. Yeah, I think February 23rd. April 23rd. That was the email from April 23rd was from April 28th. I don't think we approved those yet.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes on April 21st as written.
We'll move.
April 21st or 20.
We got 21st.
The 21st and 23rd.
Okay,
Right.
so there's 3 of them then.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
428 was when they came out.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one.
Yep.
Yep.
They both were on 428?
423.
Right. You said 4.8.
Today.
Okay, so, all right, I'm sorry.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the 21st and the 23rd as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This is carried 6-0 on both. All right, on to the mill rate discussion. Suzanne, do you have that Excel spreadsheet just so we can just have it up there? So per the town meeting and the information we had at that time, the undesignated fund current level was with using fiscal year 25-26 budget numbers was 4,355,698.07, which was at a 17.99%. And given a 17% number, that put us at a 240,552.44 for mill rate stabilization. 240,552.44.
Is that a worksheet that we have available?
It's on my presentation.
Your PowerPoint from?
Yeah.
Okay.
You need me to send that to you right now, Lou? Anybody? It's like page 9 of 12. You have that presentation? Whatever, whichever one works. Yep. All right, so we're this bottom one is the one that we really want to focus on, not the 18.73%. We want to focus on using the expenditures for 25, 26 to compare what the 17% would be. That's at 4,115,145.63. I don't know what that, what's that? I don't know what what is that right there? It doesn't, that wasn't. Okay, all right. That's not really applicable here. So we're at 17.99 using the new numbers. Oh, do you have that? Did you go, like, scroll down a little bit? All right, you don't have that, the delta, what the delta is the 240, 552, 44. Oh, it is, okay, all right, all right. All right, so we have a deficit of 128 that we saw from that last slide. $128,679.
Mike.
So we have a,
Brett.
we still have 111,872, 44.
Leave that one up there. Well, all right. John's right there.
$112,000 to play with.
Mike. Oh, 1, 2. Could we, let me ask you this. Do we need to only drop it to the 17%?
No,
All right, so we could decide to go a little lower if we had to.
yes.
All right.
We can only drop it. We can't do it more than the 128 plus 20,000 without a referendum. Is that right?
Okay, there we go. That's what I was.
Say that, what? Oh, yeah, I
You can't-
yeah, I
You can
understand.
balance it, but you
Right.
can't go more than the extra
20.
without going to town.
Right, right.
Which referendum.
Extra 20 on top of the 128. So I think we ought to balance the budget to start with. And then figure how much, what we want to do with the rest. Probably not all at this time.
So I'd like to take a look at the information that Suzanne sent out. She spent a lot of time on this. And it falls in line with some of the comments we heard during the budget review and approval season. Am I taking your thunder here, Suzanne, or should I keep going? So I just want to point out best option. I'm not sure that's an accurate statement. It's probably the preferred option. Best option will be decided based on this discussion. But rather than merely balancing the budget with the overage in the non-lapsing account, we could buy down debt and have the same result and put us in a better starting point for next year's budget build, because we'll have debt that won't be hitting us right out of the gate, plus the 128 that we put in. And that's where I was going with this. Suzanne, you want to fill in around the blanks, because I'm obviously running through a minefield here.
Sure. Gary had asked us to come up with some options of paying down the debt of the capital. And I sat with Bob, and the two we looked at that you really probably want to assign the funds to is the rebalance, 15,000. That's not going to come back on the capital. That'll be a done deal. This is coming out of the 128. Also the Hearst tools, it's another 35,000. You're not going to see that come up on the capital again if that's paid off, assigned from the 128. And then I did the different leases, like for instance, the first option, number one, the Volvo loader. If we pay off the amount for this current fiscal year, and also with the undesignated funds, it'll pay off the 27-28 fiscal year. So that's going to reduce the budget right off the bat for those fiscal years. And I also, if you look to the right, it'll show you the savings on interest if you paid in advance. So Melissa had talked to the banks, to the leasing companies, and we got the exact payoff amount for the end of June and what the savings would be. So looking at this, right to the middle column, you'll see what you would need in addition for appropriation to do that payoff of this whole debt.
I'm sorry, what are we looking at? Middle column where?
It was emailed to you, I believe, yesterday, Winona,
Okay, thank you.
the PDF. Yeah.
And then when you get to the bottom of the list, not that it's by design, but there's also paying off of long-term debt on the emergency services building or the school.
And with those debts, I mean, the 20, 30-year loans at a very low interest rate, but to pay it off, if you would to put a chunk of money down this coming fiscal year, you wouldn't really see the results, the benefits till the end of the loan. It would shorten the loan and you would save maybe a significant amount of interest by doing that. But again, you're not going to see that for another 20 or 30 years. So the short-term payoff of the debt, Bob and I, gave you a couple of options that I highlighted that might be beneficial to look at. And again, it all depends on what you want to use. If you want to stay at the 17%, if you want to go below that, we'll determine what debt you would like to pay off.
So I just have a quick question if you don't mind. So in the spreadsheet that you're sharing, the 245, 52, 44, this is above the 17% based upon the new fiscal year 25-26 budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct. So for instance, if you look at option number 2, it pretty much stays in line with the 128 to balance the budget. And then you need an additional appropriation of 78,725. So that stays under the 111,000 excess for over the 17%.
I'm sorry, say that again, Susan.
So
Suzanne?
option number 2,
Yeah.
you would have to get an appropriation of 78,725 to pay off the debt of the hook lift truck.
Mhm.
So that additional $111,000 that you have to play with to pay off debt will fall within, that 78,000 would fall under that. So that would keep you at the 17%.
But that's an option.
That's an option.
If we wanted to do that.
If you wanted to.
The
Exactly.
bare minimum, it would be the 2025 reval costs, the Hearst tool payoff, and the hook lift, which brings us to 132,350, which was in striking distance of the 128, which keeps the mill rate flat.
Correct.
And puts us in a better starting point for next year. If we choose to go deeper to get us closer to what policy says we should be at, we could ask if we could jump on Bob's referendum and do the additional 78 payoff a little more debt. That fair? Sorry, I called it your referendum, but sorry, town meeting, sorry.
So just so I can be clear here,
Sure.
looking at the hook lift truck, I apologize. I didn't see this earlier tonight, so kind of doing this on the fly. We're looking at 2 payments over the next 2 years, actually 2.5 years, right? At 82,350,000 per year. And that $82,000 payment is a one-time payment per year?
Correct.
And when do we make that payment?
This one is. July 1st.
So you'll be making it this July, right? July 21st. Okay.
So you'd see for this coming fiscal year, 26 and also 27, you'll see that 82,000 and change, not in the budget. And it would be a $3,624 savings in interest.
I understand about the savings on the payments and they're giving you a discount for the quick buy down. But do we know how much the actual principal amount is right now on that?
The principal initially was 230,925.
Mhm.
And the total interest was 16,124.
No, but did they give you a principal payment? Just a principal balance too? Which is,
Our principal payoff is 149,520,
okay, that's 149,000.
520.
And yet we're going to give them a check for
61.
161,000.
Because it reduces the debt that we start for the budget build for next year.
No, it reduces the payment, not the
Fine,
debt.
Fine, so
It's-
I'm sorry.
You're
All
not
right, so we
reducing
redu-
debt.
So we start the budget at a lower number next year during the budget build. Is that correct, Lou?
Right, but it's almost irrelevant
Do
because,
tell.
well, because it's built into the budget. The cash flow is there.
You got 132,000. That's not going to be a starting point for next year's budget build. It's going to come right off the top when they do a bottoms up budget build.
Right, but in this case, we'd have $160,000 more in the bank.
No, we wouldn't because we're already over our allowed in the bank.
We-
We're over our 17%. We
Then-
need to do something with it within a
then-
year.
And what are those options?
Pay down the mill rate
Yep,
or send it back to the taxpayers, both of which are the same. They both benefit the taxpayer.
right.
This gives the taxpayer the best bang for the buck, in my opinion, because you go into next year's budget with a baseline that's 132,000 that would be if we just plunked it towards the mill rate to plug the gap.
Again, that's a cash flow statement.
Yep.
I'm just saying that right now by doing this, I haven't computed it, but I'm going to guess the effective interest rate that we're going to be charged on this lease will be north of 15%.
I'm gonna trust the people that pay the monthly bills to get the decimal places right. But it's a pretty compelling case here, Lou.
No, well, I guess we're just going to disagree on that
Yeah.
because
But you
It's
and I
not the
always
decimal
disagree, and
points.
it's healthy. It's good.
it's not the decimal points. It's that it's actually going to cost us cash. That's going to cost us that percentage rate.
Over to you.
It's
So-
gonna cost us that no matter whether we pay it now or at the end over the next 2.5 years.
It's just that we're
Same
not-
money.
It's just that we're not.
We're
gonna
just
tax
gaining an
people.
extra 9,000 in interest out of it, but we're starting next year that much less when we go to do the budget. If we put it against the other one, like you want to do on the end.
Yeah.
We're not going to see any savings for the next 20 years. We will see savings in interest. But if we take that money right now and put it in the bank, how much interest would we make on that money against what we would save in 25 years?
But it's not 25 years. It's only 2.
No,
And-
no. If we take the money that we're gonna spend and put at the end of the two big leases that we have for 20 and 25 years,
No, those are
those are loans.
loans.
Okay.
Those are, yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm not saying leases, loans. We take and put that money towards them particular buildings.
Mhm.
In my mind, yes, we'll save money at the end in 25 years. I don't know if you and I will be here.
I don't, yeah.
But at the same time, that money, if we just took that money and set it aside in the bank, what could we make out of that in them 20 years? Do we make more than $75,000, whatever it was on one of these?
I don't know. I didn't
Okay,
exactly follow that. So I'm just looking
There's
at
two
a
against you now.
transaction. Yeah, I'm just looking at a transaction and
It
I
is,
guess-
But we're trying to set up for next year in case we don't have as much income coming in. that we have stuff that we have taken off our bills to pay monthly or
Yeah.
yearly is what we're looking at. It also reduces some of the debt we have, which as
Mhm.
far as lease payments. That's in my
It,
mind.
it's true, and all I'm saying is that if we do it this way, the effective cost for financing that asset is going to, and I didn't do the numbers, but it's probably gonna be north of 15%. So maybe if you all feel more comfortable not having that monthly or annual payment, even though the money would be in the bank anyway, you're paying for it anyway. I guess maybe this ought to be just a lesson in that we shouldn't be leasing vehicles or anything going forward because this is just a bad deal.
Or if we lease, we should be having an option to pay off early.
Well, this one does, but no matter what you do with a lease, the penalty's
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
They're always gonna
So
put the penalty
Is
in.
that what
I
you're getting the
agree.
15% is the penalty on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was losing.
well,
on
because
that
we
right
owe 149. We're gonna pay 161. The penalty is the difference. That's what we're paying as a penalty
The penalties are commuted in the, got it.
in the payoff,
Understood. Okay.
which
All right.
is,
But
had this been a loan,
Yeah,
our 149,000 that we owe
Right.
would have been the check that we wrote, 149.
Right.
But because it's a lease,
Not
We're rate-
necessarily. There will always be some sort of early payoff fee. It'll be somewhat reduced, but
never did that on a municipal deal.
Okay.
Never.
maybe not in the municipal, but in the business world, they get us every which way.
No. You gotta have a good negotiator. But
All right, so
anyway,
one. For purposes of immediacy. And setting the mill rate.
Mhm.
Can we agree that we're going to use 128,679 from the undesignated fund to fill the gap to maintain the mill rate at 28.88?
I get nervous about setting it at that because it won't cover what needs to be done here. You're gonna get your mill rate at flat if you pay the 132,350 in debt. You get the mill rate flat if you pay down those debt options. Am I correct there?
No. Why? Why would you?
From my understanding is the 3 or 4 items that are in the budget, this year's budget, we're gonna pay them right now, pay them up front, done, before the budgets, before they're actually due. That reduces that budget down by 132,000, which just eliminated our 128. Yeah. So now we're flat. Then if you take an appropriation out of the budget up for a little bit more, we lose 1 more, 2 more payments afterwards. Am I correct?
Take another 70.
Yeah.
I think you have to, for that 128, it has to be in the fiscal year 25, 26.
Right.
If you pay it before that, then that's an appropriation that has to go to the town for approval. Because when the budget was approved, they're approving what the Board of Finance has to do to make up that deficit. If you're paying it before, so basically what you're doing, that 128 is paying the Hearst tools, it's paying the reval, it's paying the lift, but the additional payment in that appropriation is going to be the difference of paying that debt off, where you're going to see it for the following fiscal year. Does that make sense? Because you're not changing the mill rate by this 128. You're it's already, yeah, you're going to assign those funds, maybe assign the 128 to these specific capital line items, and then get the appropriation for additional debt.
Yeah, because if we can do that, I mean, that's what we talked about originally. I just don't know if,
Because
go ahead, Dan.
because we're at a deficit of 128,680, right? We have to we have to make ourselves whole on the budget, to balance the budget. We need to have that much money in there. So these items is just adding more money into the bucket to make ourselves whole. So we're just gonna take the money out of the undesignated fund to make ourselves whole on that. How it's allocated inside the budget, we approved the budget, both budgets. how that money is worked out, that's how it's already been approved, because those assets have already been allocated for payment. Correct?
Right,
You guys are fading a little bit.
because we're fading.
Mentally or
All of
noise
it.
wise?
It sounds like you're just moving further and further away from the microphones, that's all.
It's happening in my mind too, when I'm
In reality, it all works, but we're
So-
making the payment.
But so if I understand what you're saying, we need to add if we choose option 2, we need to, that 128 would grow by the 132 to the negative, and then we would take the money out of the undesignated fund to make it come to 0.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about doing, right? I mean,
You made a
Right.
comment a couple of meetings ago where you go, you're saying, well, we're just making the payment. If you're paying it out of the undesignated fund up to a certain point, which say like capital,
Mhm.
you're just making that payment. Because as long as you don't exceed the number right there, you're just making that payment for the year.
because the annual payments are already
Already in
in
it.
the 20, so it's the
Correct.
2026, 27 budget.
Correct.
So
As long as you don't.
I mean,
exceed
a little circular reference.
Right.
Right, and I mean, just in my mind, just to simplify things, we would allocate, just like we did last year, which is if you go back to the undesignated fund slide, you see that there's certain funds that were that 165 in the negative, it's three lines up, is what we allocated last year for the budget shortfall. We took that out of the undesignated fund. There's 96 is added back because the auditors already, the real deficit was 96,668 from last year's budget. We took more to lower the mill rate last year. That's why it's 165 is what we're saying. So the real deficit is 165 minus the 96 is what came out of the undesignated fund. If that makes any sense to everybody.
It makes perfect sense and.
And what we would do again, Gary, is add another line for 128, 679 coming out. And then on July 1st, we know where we are for our policy, and we make a decision at that point to pay down debt that's going to be in next year's budget.
Yeah, and I'm trying to move this faster, Mike. I'm sorry. I'm being a little obtuse, but bear with me. I don't want to do what we did last year. I want to do this in a fashion where we posture ourselves to go into next year's budget lower if we're paying anything down. So anything we decide tonight, if we decide to put 128 instead of 165 there, I want to make sure we tie it in with anything else we want to buy down and get it into the town meeting so that
It's next year, but you can't do that until after.
there's got to be this. How do you guys run a business? Oh, I get it now.
That's
And
why
that's, I mean, that's kind of why I was told John that we're going to handle this in the summer because then we'll know, because after July 1st, we're going to know how much did we actually have to give to the North Stonington Ambulance Association for that appropriation. It might have not have been 76. You know, the deobligation is the deobligation. That's a positive in there. You know, and there may be several times.
I can't believe there's not a way.
No.
I know, but
If
but
we have the
Mike-
cash on hand to pay down debt
Yeah,
now.
but to pull out the undesignated fund, we can only in this instance right here, we can only balance and go up to 20.
So we
That's
can go to
it.
148.
If you want to lower the mill rate and put a bigger number in above 128 to lower the mill rate, that's what we're talking about right now. You can do that right now.
Mhm.
Other than that, if we're talking about debt, it's going to have to be after July 1st.
I think,
No. And Yeah, but we're only allowed to balance the budget at the undesignated fund,
Right.
up to,
You could lower the mill rate. But I don't think you could.
Is somebody in the audience talking?
Brett is. Captain Microphone isn't at a microphone. Now get up there, Brett.
yeah,
Speak
but,
to it.
but
I
we're
think it's
only
important.
allowed to go to 0 plus 20,000.
Plus 20,000.
That's
Right,
it.
right.
So that's to balance,
To
right?
balance and to
Or lower the mill rate.
Correct.
But if, to Gary's point,
I
if you
don't
wanted to
think that's true,
pay
but-
down debt out of the undesignated account, you'd go to the town for an appropriation of that extra money. So you could technically do it at the same time we're going for this other one,
Yeah, we could go.
but yes,
We could go to $300,000 if we
Right.
wanted to, and if it fails, well, then.
you got time to work with it, I guess,
Yeah.
as well.
I could,
Could do that.
I can live with that if that's the approach we take, but what I don't, as a budget holder at home, I don't want to just plug the gap for the budget because it doesn't do anything year over year for the taxpayer. We should find a way that if we're going to spend down the undesignated fund to keep us within policy, it should be in a manner that benefits the taxpayer in a year over year.
Well, then you should be
situation.
looking at option 3, where it goes over like a 3 or 4 year time period.
I'm open for discussion on any of it, but I don't know how to get there from here because all I hear is we can't do that.
Well, I'm just saying, if you're just talking about setting the mill rate and getting it without having to go to referendum, you have to bring it to 0. And to spend out of the undesignated fund, you would have to go up to $20,000 without having to go to a town meeting. Well, if everybody has the appetite to go to a town meeting and link everything together, well, okay, great.
That's, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
But if you're looking for the best bang for your buck and everything
Yep.
over a multi-year time period where you're gonna have a much lower debt, well, you look at option 3 where it's almost $70,000 across 3 years.
But you're just paying it in advance.
That's a lot.
It's,
You're looking at it from, we have already
If-
taxed money sitting there, collecting interest.
well, that
What's
gets
the
to the point of maybe the thing to do is to lower the mill rate. That's the quickest way
Okay,
to get the money back to the taxpayer. This is their money. And for us to pay an effective rate
well, we're just not.
north of anything we should be. And instead, just lower the mill rate, get it to where it should be so that the taxpayers can keep the money in their own pocket, not in ours. What would
And
double?
when we come out of the
What
gate,
would double?
and the first thing we have to pay back is the 128, right? And when you build the budget, Bob?
So if there's not, we got lucky the last couple of years with income. So that's where we're at right now. My feeling is if we lower the mill rate right now, everybody's happy. Next year, we're not so good as far as what we have for income. Now we got to put 2 points on there where we lowered it a quarter. If we keep it flat, we should be able to hold our own with what we got coming. I'm just afraid that the lower you go, the more we got to make up in a year and a half or 2 years.
Right, but in the meantime, the taxpayers have that money in their pocket.
And most of them will spend it and then
It's,
complain.
it's theirs to spend.
It is theirs to spend, but they
Listen,
also
and-
have a lot of debt.
To be honest with you, I think it's, the cleanest thing to do is mill rate control. But my concern is getting a handle on where we are. Because last year, and I've worried about this all year, because we made a decision last year that was based upon 2 things happening that have not happened. That Borderland Trail grant at $58,000, was supposed to come, we said that money could come back. And then You go up, the steep grant above that, that we took money out of, go up a little bit, so $426,000 is out of our undesignated fund for the athletic fields and a project that has not happened, that 80% of that money, which is 300, if you go down below, you'll see how much is coming back out of that. You scroll down. 340,000 will be returned to the undesignated fund. So last year, when we set the mill rate and we did everything, it was based upon the likelihood that we were going to be above our 17%, a minimum of $165,000. And so we were able to close the budget gap and lower the mill rate. But none of those projects happened. And right now, we also have additional, we got lucky because 365,000 from the prior steep grant came in. We got a little bit of a juggling act going on, and I want to get a handle on it before we go doing anything with money that's not in the hopper yet. Right now, we know we have money. We have everything taken out that needs to be taken out. There's only good things can happen with this undesignated fund policy as we are right now. But we have a budget that, and when I did my presentation, I'm trying to figure out why we have a deficit of 128 when, if you look at last year's expenditures to this year's expenditures, it's not that much. It was 96,000. It was at minus 96,000. You have to add what was put in for additional revenue, and that's why there's the actual delta is 128. So we've already based a budget upon having $96,000 more in revenue than we actually have, because we took it from the undesignated last year, and we're about to do that again. So we're hitting that point where we're using the undesignated fund, and I don't mind doing it because we have such a healthy fund, but I don't want to mess around with too much taking from it without getting all of the money in there and doing it after you take the 128, and what if we have something there, then each time we can pay for something. I know where your point is, Lou, but you could pay for something that doesn't come in, that's not going to be there next year, and I have no problem with that. But it's got to be we know where we are and we know what the cushion is. Not, I just have a hard time with how we're doing this right now and how you're thinking. I appreciate it, Gary, but I'm having a hard time with it because it's a little bit of a shell game with.
So we have
this.
$767,000 outstanding in between the 426 and 340. Are those the two numbers you used?
What's that?
Steep grant has been spent. Which two numbers am I adding? I thought you said 349.22.
The 349, 20, that will come back once we do those projects.
That money's
Yeah,
already.
but they haven't even started.
Yeah,
No,
money's
they haven't.
So what I'm saying is, I'm going to date myself, but if these are beads on an abacus, we've moved them to the right because we plan to spend them.
Correct.
But there's no activity happening there.
Correct. Money's encumbered still. Correct.
Right. And you're worried about throwing another 128 towards the 340. So you'd be at 560 or 460.
No. No, the 340 is, if you go up, we've taken out 426.
Right.
Which is the encumbered amount.
That's the encumbered
Full.
amount.
Yep.
We're gonna get 80% back.
If the project happens. If that project never happens,
340.
then that whole 426 comes
That's,
back.
that's note 2 on that sheet.
Right.
That's the number that will come back once the project's closed out. That's what we'll end up getting.
And then that Assaconk Borderland Trail Grant, 58 has been encumbered, 58 comes back if the project gets done.
So-
And if the project never happens,
So
58,000
that
becomes
balance,
unencumbered.
so that balance you see up there is the actual living balance.
Yeah, that one's gonna happen, right?
Encumbered money, everything.
I get that.
Yep.
So how does that tie to the 128? Because you're saying you don't feel comfortable buying down debt with those two hanging out there.
I don't know. I'm just saying that we are budgeting at a deficit using this money, which means that the expenses each year, we were already 96 in the hole, and now we're gonna be 96 plus 128 in the hole.
I completely agree, which is why I would rather, if we're gonna take undesignated funds, we take debt we owe, we actually pay for it. So when we go into next year's budget bill, we start at a lower
And I
point.
don't.
And that's a
and
hard money solution.
I
That's
agree
the-
with you 100%, as long as that next year's budget does not include that whatever money that we took out of it. But I think that has, in my mind, should be done on between July 1st and September 1st.
So this is why I'm gonna say it a different way. We balance it right now. We set it to 28.88, right? That sometime in the summer, we all have a discussion to come up with a plan with when more funds are either been allocated, come back from the state or whatever. War chest gets a little bit bigger, or we have a little bit more definitive number. And then we say, all right, coming up, Bob, what about this? Give us an appropriation. We're gonna knock these things out and have a town meeting sometime, whenever. And then we'll do what you want to do.
And then next year's budget is
And then next year-
is
and I'm-
that much less.
And I'm fine with that, but we all know what happens once we plug that 128 gap and school closes and we all go out on our boats or we're knocking a little white ball around in the short grass, hopefully. You know, we all disappear until September. I want to make sure if this is the approach we're going to take, then we're working all summer to figure out how we're going to pay
I'm
down some
so
debt.
on board with you.
Yeah,
Amen.
I have Wi-Fi at the marina. I'm good. And I got a hotspot. There's no excuse.
I am so, and I'm gonna say here right now, and the thing that concerned me about your plan was I didn't want next year to, if we're gonna pay down a capital item or a bunch of capital items for fiscal year 26, 27, that we don't add that, and then we're still that much higher next year.
I-
We really use that to save the taxpayers some money next year to keep the mill rate
I
stable.
agree. I just
Again,
want to actually.
we're all
see
on,
it come
we're
down.
on board with you 100%.
I cannot, I just want to make an overarching statement. I cannot believe that we as the Board of Finance for a town with a municipal budget can't pay down debt anytime we feel we have available funds. I get within the town meeting guidelines, but this is just bizarre.
Let me ask you this, and Brett, you might want, I want your opinion on this. So this whole $20,000 on top of the 128 question, because that's the most appropriation amount that we could spend. You know, so last year we put 96,000 to fill the gap. But we reduced the mill rate an additional, let's call it 70 grand. The mill rate went down 0.11, remember? If we actually have to use that money, because we haven't had to use that money yet, we're still, you know, as far as revenue versus expenses for the year that we're in, it doesn't look like we're going to be falling short where we need to use that extra 75,000 or that 90 or the whole 165,000. But if we did, would we have to go to an appropriation if we went over 20 grand?
This year.
No, the budget was approved, then we set the mill rate, which lowered, which was
Lowered your
a set-
revenue coming in.
which we were plugging the revenue gap with undesignated funds
Right, which technically lowers the revenue you're bringing in because you use the undesignated gap to lower the mill rate.
Well, you're,
to bring the
no,
revenue.
you're using the undesignated fund for revenue that was not there.
No, you're balancing the budget.
Yes.
Right.
That's the key word, balancing the budget with that. You're not adding $400,000 in, but you only have to plug a $200,000.
I know, but basically what the townspeople voted on was an expenditure budget,
Correct.
Correct.
okay?
We have to
We
come up with
made up a plan to you, see what I'm going, well, that's why I'm like, I don't like doing this. When the budget was passed and we have a plan of either maintaining the mill rate or lowering the mill rate, that's the discussion for now, and then using the undesignated fund for debt reduction or whatever is a post fiscal year issue, which is why I want to do it in the summer.
And I know Suzanne reached out to some other finance people in different towns, but it might be worth checking with some legal authority or the state about what you have to go to the town for an appropriation for if it was already approved. So if it was already approved in a budget, you're already approving that expenditure. We never really talk about how we're paying for those things.
Right.
So I understand some other towns say you have to do it this way, but I'd like it from an authority to say you have to because of this reason in this statute or something like that.
I would think that if, we came up, we had an expenditure budget, we knew we had to pay for it, we had that budget passed. There was $165,000. If we lowered the mill rate, we have $165,000 delta. That's already discussed. We already had designated that from the designated fund. We don't need an appropriation.
So basically what you're saying
Vote.
is
We don't need a vote to use that money.
you're saying because the town is responsible for paying debt, you're saying that if it's already on the books, we should be able to pay that debt whenever we want.
I'm saying, I think you can make that argument. So I'd like someone a legal authority or the state to say, yes, you could do it that way.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. If he's saying it, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
because I look at it like when we did the school building project, we
Yeah.
approved that debt. Come to find out, a lot of us were on the impression it was a 20-year note. When they actually settled on it, they went with a 30-year note. The town had no say in that, right? That was done between the Board of Finance and the selectmen at that time. So nobody talked about where that money was coming from and how it was being expenditure or had to go back to the town because it was over that money. So when you look at some of these budgets, we're looking at those expenditures. We're not looking at how that revenue is being paid for that.
Sure.
So
But I can tell you during COVID, when we used undesignated funds to keep mill rates stable, we didn't go back for any kind of vote to pay for those bills.
No.
No,
we just
because
balanced the
Now, we
budget.
paid the bill,
We
because
paid the bill.
technically,
which I would agree with, what would be the case in this sense, up to 165. If you went above that, I think you would need an appropriation.
so if you look at other towns, Stonington, for instance, last year, I forgot how they took a lot more than $20,000
It's
out
like
of their
3 million or
undesignated-
something.
3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go to the town and say, do you want to take 3 million to pay down
But they
this
didn't-
budget to
no, that was
lower
to
your
plug the
mill rate?
hole.
Because you have the authority to set the mill rate and you, by all means necessary.
You got to pay the bill.
Right. So you can take more than the 160 technically if you were just lowering the mill rate.
And that let's bring it back. The only thing that you would need appropriation for is if you add an additional expenditure that was not in the budget above $20,000. There we go. That's what we have. That's how
But
we
that's
do it.
why I say we might want to just get a double
get a
check
legal
on it.
opinion
But I
on that
know
one.
with the lowering of the mill
For
rate.
sure.
They voted on the expenditures. If you add an expenditure that was not in the budget over $20,000, then you're gonna have.
And that is the
So
word
the
in the
double payment
statute,
would
the-
be
is
considered
an
an
ex-
expenditure.
Well, because,
is
so
an
in this case,
expenditure.
just using the hook lift truck as an example, the 82,350 is already in the budget
Right.
for next year.
Yes.
So now you're going to add one more of those payments.
Yeah, but can you legally do that?
No, what I'm suggesting is that because it wasn't in the budget, you can't,
You can't.
right? Because
Right.
we didn't get
But
approval
we
for
can
that.
we can use the undesignated fund and appropriate that on July 15th.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. And then send it to a town meeting. and
Instead
they
of
say,
town meeting and pay,
yeah,
and pay
yeah,
down the debt.
I think we're all saying the
Right.
same thing here.
But I think the two of you were on the same page. of
Yeah.
You have to worry about the mill rate for tonight
Yeah, tonight.
Yes.
and then this
Tonight.
Yes.
at a later date, because
When-
we do
when
have
he
to
was-
send out tax bills.
When he was sitting,
Thank
talking to
you.
Gary and him were having that moment and everything, I'm like, no, this is how it needs to be. Yeah, good always to have a moment.
Dude, this is how we hash things out.
Where did Gary go?
I don't know. We got a 5-minute break. But Bob, you have some comment? All right, order in here.
Just a couple of comments. So basically, if you're not going to use the undesignated fund, and I know you are, but if you weren't, then we figured this year's budget on 28.88. That's how it was figured. That's the current mill rate, right? 28.88. So you would have to actually raise the mill rate tonight to satisfy that $128,000
Yes,
debt.
yes, we would.
So when we say we're lowering the mill rate, we're not. We're just maintaining the mill rate and you're filling a gap so we don't have to raise the mill rate. That's
Correct.
basically what you're trying to do.
Right.
And I also agree with you, since you're supposed to do the mill rate tonight so the tax collector can get the tax bills out. That's the most important thing to do tonight, is set the mill rate. The other stuff you want to talk about with the additional over 17, we can do that in the summer. We can do it when it's more convenient, when we have more information. Because we know right now, because of the excavators, there's gonna be money going in. I haven't put the 103 in for the auction and the old excavator and take the 120 something out yet. The all accessible trail is gonna start next week. So that $58,000 is gonna go out and come back. So this thing's is moving parts over the next month or two. The one thing I just mentioned too, when you're out, is when we say we can say it's projected to be in a number is projected to be in the budget for next year. So next year's budget we haven't even started on yet, but there is no budget for 26, 27. That's the projected budget. When we see we're paying things for 3 years in a row or 4 years, we're projecting it to be in a budget, but there is no budget.
Right.
And the other thing is to make this thing work, and I am all for paying down debt, is that we have to stick with the capital plan. We can't say, oh, now we paid a truck off, so let's make another one come in early. We got to stay with the plan. So we take a capital holiday for a year or two and we take something out and not put something else in, we spent the money, we paid it off, so now we have more money to spend. We can't do that. So let's go in with a capital budget that's less. That's all.
Right, and that was my point too. I didn't want to fill it with something else, and then, we're still in a hole. If we're going to do something with the undesignated fund, I still want to get a catch up on the holes that we've had for the last 2 years. I'm proud of maintaining the mill rate and keeping us stable and using our fiscal health to do that. I just don't want to get that deficit out of control that we need to keep a handle on it.
Can you bring that spreadsheet back up? The budgeting one. The other one, not that one. Yeah, that one. So we have to balance the budget, right? And we can put $20,000 on top of that. Well, this will satisfy Gary because then we can also, if we put $20,000, we can knock off the reroute payment right down there for this year. Put this one. If we're gonna go balance the budget, what's another $20,000 of the undesignated fund? Makes us all feel good. Look, Gary's shaking his head. He's feeling it. So if we were gonna go and set the mill rate, we would just plug in 148, 680 in there, and then we'd have an overage of that. And then we just have to. No.
So let's,
Yeah.
well, let's not work this live. I get nervous when we work this live and then we adjourn and we find out that we tweaked numbers in two places and what we agreed on was right. Let's just write down what we're talking about, take it offline, and we come back with one final vetted set of numbers. I get nervous when we do this. Because it would be fine if all but a few cells were locked. But everything is a variable in this thing. And if you change it in a couple places, everything goes completely.
So in that case, would we suggest we just leave the mill rate alone right now? Just leave it alone and we'll do the work in July and August as far as whatever other considerations we're looking at? Is that? Because we need to set the mill rate tonight so that the tax bills can be prepared and go out. So we have to make a decision on the mill rate. So if we leave it alone and we just say to Dan's point or not, as far as that $20,000 difference, we just,
Yeah.
we balance it that way.
And I agree with you. I mean, if you're suggesting that we leave it as is, I would prefer to leave it as is. I mean, I get you, Dan, and that's attractive. But while we're running in a deficit, I don't want to reduce revenue beyond keeping it flat.
Every time we say we're running at a deficit, I
Can't say that.
I get concerned. Because from a budget perspective, it's an accurate statement, but if we've got this undesignated fund that's whole and it's healthy above what our outer limits are we truly running at a deficit? So we need to be careful about using the word deficit.
Yeah, we just approved $130,000 to go to a mini excavator or whatever, a smaller excavator.
Stand up so no one needs to hear this.
I'm just saying, if you look in over the years, and I remember, Mike, when you were first on the Board of Finance and they had to dip in the first time and you're like, I'm really uncomfortable doing this. I don't want to do this every year to balance the mill rate.
When the reval happened, we fixed it.
Right. But if you think about it, we've turned back money every year above what.
And that's a budget. A budget's a budget.
Right. Above whatever money we thought we would have to dip into the undesignated account. So Gary's point is, right, we're not really running at a deficit. When we're looking at the budget, okay, the numbers look a little different, but every year
who's the Republican? We're running, it's the revenues here and the expenditures are here.
But our
we are
expenditures
120
we haven't gone over our budgets, really.
In
that revenue.
No, in a literal sense, no, we haven't. And that's a testament to how this town runs.
Yeah. So if you look at how much we had to take out of the undesignated account technically last year to put into this budget compared to
It's
what
zero.
we returned, it's
Last year, we gave much more back than was ever. We didn't take anything out of Disney, but we gave more money back than
right.
We had
Mike
those-
and Dan, can you guys clarify for me this $20,000 comment? Somewhere I lost this piece.
You're basically saying that if you add 120 $8,000 that you're taking out of undesignated, if you were going to use more than that, it's an appropriation and we're limited to the 20,000 for an appropriation.
Right.
That's
I don't think that's accurate at all. So that's an additional, you guys could technically, and if you look at all the towns around us, you can lower the mill rate to anything you really wanted to by using the undesignated account.
I realize that,
But if you're making extra payments, that is
that's
an
what I mean, that's what I'm
expenditure.
talking about.
That
Yeah,
is.
right.
But what he's saying is you couldn't lower the mill rate by more than the 160, right? Is that what you were?
148.
Right, the 120. That's not true. You can lower the mill rate as much as you wanted below,
Agreed.
without going above below the
We
8.5%.
did it 165 last year.
Right. So without going to town meeting, those are two separate things. The town meeting is the
Expenditure.
additional expenditure.
So are what is on the table currently? Keeping the mill rate at the 28.88 and using is it the gap of the 128,000 and change to make that happen? Because what's on the screen right
Yes, I
now
know.
is
And
Suzanne's
Dan was suggesting
folder.
reducing the mill rate an additional, whatever, 0.2, is that 0.02?
Suzanne,
It's
what you're
basically
sharing
the
is okay.
this
Thank
year.
you.
No. We're already paying for the reval. We're just
So this proposal is to reduce the mill rate to 28.85.
Correct.
And
28.85.
And so this is so we're talking about changing the mill rate from its current level and it why, I guess.
The why is because Dan's saying, we have.
Just
an
because we can.
expenditure- Yeah, we have an expenditure in the budget it's already an expenditure of 15 grand. If we took an extra 20 out of the undesignated fund, so rather than 128,680, it's 148,680. That would give us a variance of an extra 20,000. And then if you reduce the mill rate to 28.85, the variance would be $908.
We're going to do that just so that we can get 20,000 without having to go to a town meeting for an appropriation.
But I don't
No,
think.
no, I know. I'm just saying, we don't have to.
know that.
Okay.
Okay.
Just wanted-
So, but theoretically, I mean, we have, what did we say? We have $450,000 to work with, right? Like we could dump all of that in here, correct?
That's what I was thinking, but I keep getting told we can't do that. So run with it, Winona. Maybe you get a bit of a difference, a better answer than I got.
I mean, so is that the number that we've got $240,000 over here? We could dump all $240,000 into this and into the,
Operating budget.
yeah, into the operating budget and get a mill rate of, what would it be? If you put 240 in there. Two seven.
No. Oop, wrong way. You're going the wrong way. I think you're gonna look at like 2.85. Oh, 2.88. Yeah, it's gonna stay the same, because it's just, you just balance it with a,
Wait, what? If we needed 120 to balance it, how does 240 keep it the same?
Are you missing a zero?
Something's not right.
no, it's
We
wrong.
we messed up the formula somewhere.
There you go. That's, yeah, that was the number that was missing. Yeah, the 120, okay.
Winona wanted to put 240 in.
Right.
If you put 240 in,
0.028. 83, maybe.
wow, there's not much.
No. What are you doing here?
Closer.
7-1.
Two, 8, 9.
7-1. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only nickels and dimes.
28.71.
So are we suggesting that's what we want to set tonight, or do we just,
That's,
I mean,
all
that tells you your floor, right? That's the best we can do. If we were gonna put it all towards mill rate, the best we can do is lower the mill rate to 28.71,
correct.
which gives our taxpayers the most money back in their pockets today.
Immediate return. Yeah. It's just a one time.
Mhm.
Gonna be the bad guy. Like to make a motion. We keep the mill rate at 28.88 by putting the deficit out of the undesignated fund 128,680.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
Motion is to take 128,679 technically from designated fund to fill the gap, maintain mill rate at 28.88. Yeah, it's to balance the budget,
Balance.
balance the budget.
Can we amend the motion to, or I guess if we're having discussion, can we say that we're gonna continue discussions on what to do with the rest of the overage later?
That's not part of the motion, but that's the understanding of this board, Winona.
Because that's just setting the mill rate currently, correct? That's what the
It's just
motion
setting the
is,
mill
just
rate.
to set the mill rate?
Yes. We know there's an overage, and we have an obligation under our policy to address that overage. And the overage may change, it may change when the fiscal year ends, depending on what appropriations go out that were approved. Money might come back in if certain projects are finished, so I think it's prudent to wait until after the fiscal year starts to determine what we're gonna do with that overage, but that's the policy is we have to address it and we're gonna address it. And to Gary's hope, we are gonna do it earlier rather than later.
Under the discussion, it troubles me that we have debt that we could financially decrease now, and yet we're unable to act. I mean, this just doesn't sound fiscally appropriate, but that's this, I'm just saying this under discussion. So something's not right here.
Suzanne, can you adjust your screen, please?
What was that, Winona?
Can you adjust your screen? You're just sharing your folders.
Winona, what do you need me to adjust?
You're just sharing folders, like there you go, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion on the table?
I mean, I guess I'm not opposed to keeping the mill rate at 28.88. But I guess I feel like there's other things that we could do. We could move it. It doesn't move a lot. We saw that. What was the number? 28.71, right? When does the mill rate have to be set by?
We're sending it today.
When is the deadline? When does the mill rate have to be set by?
Today. Tonight. We need to do it tonight.
Once again, if it's not due tomorrow, it's just not due.
When does the mill rate have to be set by? Like
Tonight.
no, that's not the answer. There has to be a date. Like we can't just say tonight because we're here tonight. There has to be a date.
May
Tax-
21st.
May 21st, 2025.
We've
All right, guys,
exhausted
you're being-
we've
you-
exhausted all our fiscal schedule float. Winona.
Yeah.
I'm
What's the
not- I'm not
statute,
kidding you.
Brett?
Brett, that's what's driving it, is the tax bills going out.
I mean, I understand that obviously, but thanks for not answering my question, team.
No, Brett's looking. Hold on.
Brett's looking right now. Why not? I don't know what the statute is. All I know is the tax bills have to go out. I don't know if there's a statute that says you have to do it so soon after a referendum.
But we have our statute guy on it.
Maybe
Well,
Jay-
it can't be after a referendum because not all referendums get passed on the first time, so.
Well, I guess one question would be, what's the difference?
I think
We're here
if we don't
tonight
Set the, if
to
we
set
don't
it.
set the mill rate.
Lou,
tonight,
it was a
And-
simple question. When
Well,
does the
no-
mill rate have to be set? I'm allowed to ask a question. I want an answer.
Winona, there doesn't seem to be an
And
app.
it's Winona. I've been on this team for 3 years and 10 months. It's Winona. Thank you.
Didn't I say that?
No, you said Winona, but it's okay.
Sorry, I apologize. There doesn't technically have to be a mill due date. It depends on, there's no statute, but some town charters do set up a mill rate deadline, but we have to set a mill rate before we can send tax bills out. And
Which
that's,
is July 1st.
well, that's when they're due. Technically.
Okay. Thank
So
you, Brett.
we pushed it, and that's why if a budget isn't set, so if it goes to referendum and it failed and it keeps going, you guys still set a mill rate prior to those dates going out usually to account for that. But we've been lucky.
And I think we're already late, or, and we normally would say.
Winona, what, so, I mean, part of your discussion, are you asking us to take more time to determine whether or not we want to lower the mill rate and using funds that from the actual 240, is that what you're asking?
I mean, I guess I feel like there's merit to this idea of paying down debt, but I don't think we've explored it enough. So if the team, if you guys want to leave the mill rate at 28.88, then that's what we're gonna vote on. So
Well,
I mean, I guess to me, debt has long-term impacts, so. And there was a lot of commentary about that at the meeting, the town meeting, so.
Right, and I would. Part of this is, right now you're taking 128,000 from undesignated. And to Gary's original point, he's trying to address that. You could instruct the Board of Finance to say, listen, make any payments that you can make out of that. So 128,000 that we have in the undesignated fund should be done in July. Make those payments right away on capital items. And we can ask them to do that. Rather than wait to the end of the fiscal year to say, do we need that 128,000 to pay all of our expenses for the year? You instruct them to pay those debts immediately in July. Would you agree, Lou, that you can do that?
Well, you can, but on the lease payments, when are the payments due? On all, are all leases due the beginning of July?
You understand what I'm saying, guys?
Yeah.
So, the expenses are there. It's just when do they get paid, and when is the funds available to pay them? We have to wait for tax bills to go out and the revenue to come in to pay bills, but we have undesignated funds there. We could tell the Board of Selectmen, hey, pay these debts as soon as possible to save money on interest.
Okay,
Simple as that.
well, on debt,
On debt.
right, but
On
you
lease
won't save,
payments,
you won't save any money on the leases.
Then we could have that discussion.
Well, okay, I'm just saying. I'm just wondering when the dates are, if you have it, if not, it's not really a fair question.
I
And
do.
also, and furthermore, anything above and beyond the 128, when we decide in July or August to 2025, to take items that will likely be on next year's fiscal budget and pay those down, we could direct them, once they're approved by a town meeting, to have those debt payments paid. And then they're just not going to be in next year's budget. So I think it's semantics. I don't want to do anything additional with the undesignated fund with regard to the mill rate and revenues and expenditure issues, because I feel like this gap is wide enough for my liking.
So do you have those dates?
I do. There's two that are due in October, one November, one June, and the rest of July. Those are the
July of this year or
2025.
every year, yeah.
Everything.
Okay,
So a
July
bunch of them would be,
1st.
we're obligated to pay those in
July and July.
And just so clear, if we pay those other ones that are due in October and November, we'll make that payment in July 1st, but we won't save a penny. because the payment's exactly the same.
A wise man said that's a cash flow issue, not a.
No, that's
Yeah,
an, that's an
I'm just-
income issue, because otherwise the money's in our bank account, earning
I- I-
interest.
I'm just Pointing it out, Lou.
Well, I think those are our points for discussion is what should we do with that? What payment should be made with that? Should we make a payment, early payment on, the school debt or the emergency services debt, whatever. And so that's, for a discussion for that time with John Olson's help. I would suggest that you email that to me so I can distribute it to everybody. Winona, does that help you at all?
It does, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor for approving that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And that was your motion? Or it was Carl's motion, in my second. All right, we do not have a suspense list, but I'm sure that we're going to have one soon. We did it last year at this time, but that's why I kept it on there, but we haven't gotten that yet.
What's a suspense list?
Suspense list is basically taxes that are basically uncollectible
They've been sitting around for years, like.
that we
10,
just write
Like
off,
tax or?
write off, yeah.
Okay, got it,
Yep.
thank you.
The town's taking a loss.
Do we have an idea when we're gonna have that? Suspense list, is that Zane? Okay. Well, that should be coming before the end of the fiscal year.
I'll have it to you shortly.
Okay, thanks.
And,
Zane.
and the suspense list is, it's not a total write-off. Even though they get, the accounts get put on a suspense list, they're still collectible for 15 years.
Okay,
So they'll still go to the collection agency and you'd be surprised how much we bring in. And when I bring the suspense list to you, I'll let you know what we've received this year from suspense.
okay,
Okay?
perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate you being with us this whole time, Zane. So that's tabled. Public comments. Done?
I'll definitely put this math together in a presentable form and send it to you, but what I did was I took each one of these loans, and I know most people look at the highest interest rate and think about paying off that amount first, thinking that that's going to be the best use of the money because the interest rate is high. I keep hearing at the meetings, the other school loans are such a low interest rate, it's budgeted, it's not going to be much significant debt reduction if we pay down. Well, I did the math on each individual loan. I'll just read it real quick and I'll get it to you. To pay down on the loader, for every extra dollar you spend, all you're going to save over the 3 years term is 20 cents on a dollar. For the hook lift truck, for the 2 years, a little over 13 cents per dollar you spend. The plow truck, about 20 cents over the course of the 3 years if you pay it down immediately. For the ambulance, a quarter for every dollar. I won't go through everything, but when you get to the school loans, the 24-year one, 66 cents for every dollar. For the other school loan, 69 cents per dollar. For the other loan, for the school, 55 cents per dollar. You multiply that out over the course of the term. And for every dollar you've given, you've almost, in the case of the schools, about another 50 cents to 75 cents. It's almost an extra half to a third. You want to give the biggest impact to the taxpayer? Lowering the mill rate is a 1-year reduction. Paying down on these trucks is a 2 or 3 year removal of something from the budget. Get you to start at a lower budget amount for the following year. But just like it does at most people's homes, when you have less obligation, you tend to spend it on something else. But when you pay down on a long-term debt, that compounded interest over 20 to 25 years is far more significant. This $100,000 potentially that you're talking about using for undesignated fund overage could be close to $75,000 of additional savings to the town. Instead of, if you took the sheet I received, if you paid off all the trucks, all you would save is $57,000 in interest. And that's nothing in comparison. For those of us who get a higher higher percentage because of the mill rate to the tax burden, that's a great savings for me. For someone that only pays $3,000 a year, or someone that pays $12,000 to $15,000 a year here for town, that's a significant difference, especially over 20 to 30 years. That's how we pay debt at home.
Can you send that math to Suzanne just so we can make sure it's vetted? I just want to make sure it's, no, I don't want a copy. I want to make sure the math you're articulating, Suzanne's had a chance to look at it, make sure
Yeah.
you guys are looking at it the right way.
Yeah, $1
Collectively.
times the interest rate. It's an annual, I even checked, it's annual compounded times the term.
We don't need to go through it here. I know when I'm running with scissors. I need you and Suzanne on the same page. Thanks, John.
Yeah. You can email that to Suzanne, you can CC me, but I'll distribute it to the board. Yep. Any other, go ahead, Brian, come on up.
Okay, let me get this straight now. So the mill rate is 28.88, is that what you set it at?
Yes,
And you're using the overage that the taxpayers paid plus an extra 20,000?
no,
Oh, okay.
no,
That's the part I missed.
no, we're using the 128,679 to balance the budget versus increasing the mill rate to plug that gap.
All right, so you're still going into the 17% ceiling?
We're
Above.
using, we know we're already above 17%. So
Right.
we're taking money from 128 from that overage to balance the budget versus raising the mill rate.
All right. So what I'm looking at is what would have been the mill rate if you didn't use any? What would it have been? How much would
It would have been 28.95, I believe, or 28.92, somewhere around that.
Yeah, but we're already over our policy, so we have to do one of two things, pay down debt or give no rate relief.
Right, and that's what I kept hearing. I'm saying, well, to me, it doesn't make sense. But I understand what you're saying, but I mean, we did that, last year and the year before.
We did it last year.
So basically, if I overpay on my taxes, which this is supposed to be a reval year, I believe, on the computer, not physically. And I don't know what my taxes are gonna be this year. I haven't got my
No,
reval yet.
your taxes for this year are gonna be based upon the grand list from October of 2024.
Alright.
Your taxes aren't, the mill rate's gonna stay the same. Your property has been evaluated already. Next year is the reval, October 2025 is the reval
Oh,
year.
that's when it takes effect.
Then it will take effect
Okay.
for the taxes for the following year.
All right, well, I don't know. I just, I'm a big supporter of paying down debt. And I think that is one of the most important things a person can do. One of the first things I was ever taught in my life. My father told me right out, you got debt, you pay it down. But
Well,
I
I
guess
have
that's
no-
different.
Yeah,
when
I have no
this,
doubt that you will be at the meetings in July and August when we discuss which debts to pay down. And I, value your input when we do have those discussions. But for as of today, the mill rate is not going to change. Your property has already been established for, and you can talk to Daryl about whether or not your property went up or down, but it shouldn't have
Yeah,
really
oh, I
moved.
will.
Other than, vehicles might change from year to year, but
All right, so.
your property taxes, your property value assessment shouldn't really move until we do the reval.
And there's nothing really carved in stone where that has to be 17%. It's supposed to be between is it 8.5 or
8.5, yeah.
8.5 to 17. So if you went down to 17, I mean to 16, we're still within
We are.
the thing. Plus, well, we can't do nothing about the undesignated for the school because that's just extra taxes that go to them.
That's a different-
Anyways, I see a lot of taxes going out. And everybody says you're putting money back in my pocket, but you know what? I didn't feel any dollar bills go there yet. But anyways, I had to figure out exactly what the total thing was. Thanks again for listening to me.
Well, think of it this way, Brian. There's dollar bills that came out of your wallet in the past. We're taking some of those dollar bills that you gave in there and making sure that you're not taking more out of your money this year. Any other public comment?
Motion adjourned.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstention.